are looking at this process of how do I set my goals or do I set New Year's resolutions, I'll give you a little statistic on that in just a second about when you're over 50, what the statistics are with us setting New Year's resolutions and probably why that's true. And I want to share a little bit with you about the insider secrets about goal setting or intention setting and where it all started, why it came about, what happened. So if you, like me, are at some point you're maybe a baby boomer or a tail end of a baby boomer, or maybe you're just barely into the next generation, any of us, we've all kind of grown up setting goals based on SMART goals. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about New Year's resolutions. I'm going to talk about if you want to set something, whatever you call it, a goal, intention, a New Year's resolution, if you do it, how you can do it better. So I've got 35 years. This literally, as of today, marks my 36th year as a fitness professional. It was 36 years ago that I first stepped into realizing that I was getting away from art and design and graphics. And what I really wanted to do was to teach in this vein. Happy New Year, Melanie. Hey, Julie. So happy birthday or happy New Year's to all of you. It is kind of a birthday, right? But I've got lots of notes here, and I've got them because I don't want to forget something as I get sidetracked. So feel free to ask questions. But here's what I want to give you. So goal setting, New Year's resolutions, it's always been on this theme of, it's a fresh start and let's do this. Here's the statistics. I wrote about this probably 4 or 5 years ago, and it's continued to stay the same. So New Year's resolutions, how popular are they? Really, they're not very popular once you are 50 and older. A very small percentage of us set New Year's resolutions. I mean, some of us have intentions or goals, things we want, but we definitely know that we've been burned, right? We've set those New Year's resolutions and then we've not kept them. And so we're probably a little wiser for it. And we don't always set those resolutions anymore compared to, say, 20 somethings who set them. Over 50% of them do, while probably 20% or fewer of us over 50 do. So it's dramatically declining over the decades for sure. But let me talk to you a little bit about SMART goals. And, when people are saying, well, New Year's resolutions don't work because SMART goals, and how many of you, and I mean, just give me a show of thumbs or a little love for you've heard of SMART goals, and everybody talks to you about SMART goals, especially with fitness and health. And if you know that to be true and you've been taught over and over and over again, SMART goals, here's the science of behavior change. And here's where, if you didn't know it, where SMART goals came from. And ever since I changed my major from an art graphic design student to becoming a physical education, it was then exercise science. It then became kinesiology. That department name has changed a lot over time, but the science behind it has not. Ever since I've been in that major, SMART goals have been the thing, and that's what we've used. And I did that back in 1984. And SMART goals actually were born in 1981. That was the year before I graduated from high school. And here's where they originated. They were out in management, in business management. That's where they came from. It's like, how do you set good management goals? That's where they originated. And George T. Doran, just so I don't get it wrong, was the article author where SMART goals originated, and he wrote it in Management Review. Now, number one, that should make you feel very, very powerful, because one idea written in an article about someone's system, and he gave it a name, he gave it an acronym, and then it's blown up so that everybody in the world, in almost every industry, has adopted. SMART goals in health and in wellness and in fitness and in business and industry, when you go to work, in all ways, shapes, and forms, this has been adapted, but only because it was written about in a management review, a business document, and then since we've all adapted it. But there's very little science connected to any kind of proof that setting SMART goals or creating your goal in the SMART acronym, which stands for that specific, measurable, attainable, and some people have changed that to actionable, which makes a little bit more sense, realistic, and or relevant has sometimes been the spin off of that one, which is also very true. And I'll talk about that just a bit. And then time, there's some kind of time measurement. So if you don't put a timetable on it, you're probably not giving yourself any sense of urgency. I mean, it's got to have some kind of, you've got to go today to do the workout in order to accomplish the mini goal that you want by the end of the week, right? And if there isn't that, I suggest that by this time next year, you want to be in better shape. Well, there's no urgency to that. And so you could easily skip it and say, no, I'm going to put the Christmas decorations away today, right? We can think of all kinds of things that can get in the way and that we need to use our time for instead of ourselves. Very true of women, right? So that's the history of both New Year's resolutions and how we've evolved to not really setting them anymore and to SMART goals. So I'm going to tell you that my philosophy for about the last 15 to 20 years is that SMART goals are dumb. So the history behind that is my master's degree and my study was not shoulders down, where my undergraduate degree and all of my fitness background and training and has continued for 36 years, but from the shoulders up. Because if we don't get it between the ears, that behavior change and the thing that really motivates us to do the things we need to, shoulders down, it doesn't really matter. None of it does. So we can educate you, we can give you the moves, but if you're not inspired to do them, we can't find that for you, what it is, then we're lost. We've missed it. And it's the same with you and your goals with your family, or you and your business. If you happen to be listening and you're a personal trainer or you're a health coach, and maybe you're both concerned about yourself and your own health goals and your business. It's the same across the board. We've got to get to the motivation and what really taps into it and how do you find it. So here's why I think and have always said, or at least for the last 15 to 20 years, because remember, this is year 36 for me. So after about 15 or 20 years, and the reason I changed my major in the first place was I was realizing that a very small percentage of people were exercising the way they should enough in order to affect even their health goals. And if we layer your progress or the benefits from exercise, there's health, there's not having sickness or illness or disease, and then there's fitness, which is a little bit better. So you've got the health, but then you're a little stronger, you have more endurance, you have more stamina, more energy. And then there's performance. So maybe you want to perform something specifically much better, and it's kind of like, if you're up here, you've got this and you've got this too. But if you don't even have the health, you can't jump ahead and skip to performance, because that's not going to happen. You've got to have that good foundation, right? So we're going to talk about that, but there are 3 key things missing from SMART goals, but I do want to dive into them. So I gave you a little bit. Hey, Connie. Hey, Wanda Brubaker. And Lisa. Hey, good morning, Grandma, right? SMART goals, specific. So that one's an easy one. Measurable. That one's an easy one. And you can do measurable where it is, okay, I've lost weight, I've lost inches, I've lost body fat, or I've gained muscle, I'm stronger. Those are measurable things. But you can also measure the actions. And those would be, I lifted weights twice this week. I did intervals twice this week. So that's a way to measure. And there was a fluctuation between attainable, right, which is also kind of capitalizes on that realistic. So it's a little bit the same, but it's an actionable thing. So it's not just something you can wish for, right? You can't sit on the couch and wish for anything, whether it's in business and management or it's actually in a relationship or for your finances or it's in health and fitness. And then there's R. So let's talk about that. A lot of people, self included, realistic. We argue with that just a little bit. It's Gigi, it's not grandma. Okay. I knew it was something else. I just couldn't remember. I kept seeing license plates flash through my head. Somebody said nanny times 5, and I'm sure that's what she meant. So when you're looking at realistic, I would caution you with that one. So the realistic goals, I think, yeah, for this week, make it realistic and attainable for you. But for the year, I would hesitate about making it only realistic because, especially for us right here, we're in our 50s or 60s, maybe our 70s if you're watching. Maybe you're in your 40s and you're still kind of flipping 50 in menopause. The challenge is we don't have a good model of what's realistic right now. I think we're raising the ceiling. That's at least the goal. We want to raise the ceiling on what's possible as we age. We don't have to accept that we gain weight just because we're aging or that we get achy joints just because we're aging. We don't have to accept that we're not going to sleep very well in menopause, because if we plant that seed, we're probably going to get that. We're attracting a lot more of it. And that sounds a little woo-woo to some of you, but woo-woo works, right? So any of you who believe in something else bigger than where we are right now, or you pray, you believe in woo-woo. I mean, we all do. So if you watch It's a Wonderful Life more than once, you're there, right? You believe it. And so I don't know about you, but I did. It was a year I needed to watch it twice. So those things, realistic, maybe, but definitely relevant. So relevant to you. It's not some arbitrary goal. And that's kind of where hormone balancing comes in when we're talking about actionable things that you can do. It's not just don't get that quota of cardio. Don't go get that quota of strength training. Don't go get that quota of number of minutes or times per week, because for you, if you're out of hormone balance, it may not be right. If you're tired all the time, right? You don't want to operate on what was meant and intended for someone who's apparently healthy. You want to make sure that you're first taking care of yourself so that you have energy all the time, and then you're changing your exercise prescription so it's a good fit for you. So realistic within the week and the right now that you're in, but more relevant to what you want ultimately and to the status that you're in. That's a better R. Time, definitely. So measurable things that you can measure at the end of a week. Was I successful doing what I wanted to do? Even at the end of a day, maybe by noon. For instance, drinking water, more water all day, every day. Simple thing that you can do, and you can measure that by noon. How close did I get to, have I already had 3 or 4 glasses, 4 or 8 ounce glasses of water, depending on where you are currently. So setting those goals so that you've got mini micro goals, you've got end of the week goals, end of the month goals, and you've got where do I want to be at the end of this year? What would I love to be saying is true about my 2020, 365 days from now? Because we all have this statement, right, of status right now about our 2019, whether it was good, bad, or ugly. It is. It's just, that's what is. Okay. So most of all, an M that I want you to think about is memorable, and maybe an R would be remarkable. So you've got to think about it. Don't just check a box. I set my goals. Make sure that they make you smile, silly smiling, so that if that happened, you'd be thrilled if that described your life. That's the kind of thing that excites us and motivates us. I mean, don't be so realistic. Try not being realistic for a change. If you've been realistic in setting your goals, set something that you just think, oh my gosh, that scares me a little to even think about doing that. Put you outside of your comfort zone and makes you a little bit nervous and excited at the same time. That's a great goal. That's the kind that you can wrap your mind around. That's really what you're after. So SMART goals are missing, and they're missing 4 things. I'm going to hit on really 3 of them that are kind of near and dear to my heart in a second. But the fourth thing, I'm going to start with that first. So David Letterman style, coming backwards. The fourth thing is those SMART goals. Most of the time when we set them, we never factor in what's going to get in the way. We never factor in the obstacles. So the question after you go through all of those things and you set something you love and exciting, you want to think about what's going to derail me, because something is, right? I mean, if you are 50 or over, do we know this already? We're going to get a roadblock. The bridge is going to be out. The brakes are going to go. Something's going to happen. And, it's going to hit the fan. So we've got to plan on that and think about, okay, when that obstacle happens, not if, but when, how am I going to deal with it? So if it is, probably those common denominators for yourself, until you establish the habit of doing these things you want to do, whether it's eating right, or it's prioritizing your sleep, or it's getting the exercise in that you need to at the time that you need to, you've got to think about, okay, what's going to get me back on track? Because it's not just a part of your life. And I probably use brushing your teeth more than anything in the world, but most of us, that's it. You're not going to not do that during a day. Maybe you dash out of the house or so early and so in a hurry in the morning that you forget, but you remember pretty quickly that you didn't do it, and you're like, ugh, right? Don't like that. But the exercise, you may not feel exactly the same yet. It may not be such a part of you that you miss it when you don't do it. And when it is, then you don't have to have that backup plan quite so much, right? But until you do, you've got to factor in the obstacles, like traveling. For a lot of us, it's travel. And, so we may have just come through the holidays where for some of you, it was harder. It was harder to exercise because you traveled or somebody traveled to you and you were hosting, when you were out of your element, or because it was just out of routine. Maybe, wasn't it weird to have these holidays in the middle of the week? It's like, I don't even know what day it is right now. It's like, I think it's the weekend, but it's really not the weekend. And I have to go to work again. And, so it's really weird. And yet we love routine. As much as we despise it, we love a routine. Our bodies like going to bed and getting up at the same time, exercising at the same time, eating at about the same time. And your body will reward you when you do those things for yourself. So it's, we shouldn't despise routine, but we've got to think about, when I get rocked out of that routine, how do I get myself back on, or back on a better one if I did? Some getting knocked off of routine can be an omen. You need to do it. It's part of the benefit of either a vacation, like a vacation from your regular life, or a retreat, the Flipping 50 retreat. So shameless plug right there. We have 2 spots left. So if you're still interested, reach out to me. If you think, okay, I could travel, I could get there. January 30th, we start. That's on a Thursday, and you'll be done by Sunday afternoon if you choose to leave then and not stay and hang out. So any details. But when you're out of your routine, it can be a catalyst for change in a good way, not always in a negative way. But illness, what happens if you get sick? So I was home over the holiday, and my sister-in-law got sick. And so it changed where I was staying, and logistically. But so as I left, then my brother-in-law got sick. So I made the right decision not to stay with him. But, when people get sick like that, they're rocked out of their routine. So not exercising regularly, not eating the same, because the things you want when you're sick are not the healthy things you want when you're not sick. So all of that you've got to plan for. That's one. So just thinking about that, if you've already set your goals, as you're listening to this, you're much better off, because it's easier to now tweak the goals you have than start from scratch. So don't get into that perfection kind of thing, that, okay, I'm going to use all these tips and then I'm going to set them and it's going to be perfect. Figure that you just got to throw darts on the wall and then you move them, and then you'll get it. But you got to start somewhere. And that a lot of us get stuck sitting in the middle of the room. We've got so many choices and so many things that pull our attention, that we don't start anything. So start small, start simple. And elsewhere on the timeline, I did a live. I was in front of a Christmas tree. So go back and look at that one. If you're just stuck in overwhelm and you don't know where to begin, go back and get that one. Now, here's the goal setting. That really is the win. 3 things that you really have to have if you're setting a great goal. So think about this, kind of go through this checklist with me. Number 1, you have to see the transformation that you want. If you're setting a goal, make it not because somebody else is doing it or not because there's a health guideline that says you should be doing this, but because you see what you want on the other end, whatever that is. So, weight loss is a big one. Just did a media appearance on why weight loss is a mistake. So if you haven't seen that, go watch it. But I'm going to use it as an example because it's like the second most popular. Sometimes it's the first, but it toggles back and forth with finances. So it's save money or lose weight, one of the two. Don't confuse those, right? Lose money and save weight, not a good combination. Okay. So be sure, be clear what you say. But you've got to see the transformation that you want. Don't be focused on the weight. Be focused on how will I feel? What image of myself do I see when I'm at that point I want to be at? And maybe it's not weight for you, it's a performance goal, or it's shifting, proportions that have changed and something went to your waistline that, wasn't there before. Whatever it might be for you, what does the transformation feel like? And you can just take a piece of paper and write them down. So if your hand hits the paper, much more creative than hitting a keyboard, right? Your brain gets it, emotions get it. And that's an important part. And we'll hit on that. But see the transformation that you want and focus on that transformation. That's number 1. Don't focus on what it is you want to lose, you want to get out of. That's like you're driving in a car, and which is better if you are the driver? Looking forward or looking out the back window at roadkill? Okay. So yeah, rhetorical question. I'm hoping you got that one right. But you want to look forward. So see it, feel it. All right. And that's number 2, feel it. So once you've got that, this is what I want to look like. And maybe that for you is the equivalent of going through magazines and pulling out pictures, or going through a photograph album of yourself a few years ago when you actually probably thought you needed to change, but now you're like, I would take that. I wish I was there where I had those problems, or I thought I had problems right now, right? Isn't that silly? I mean, we're so critical of ourselves. We never see a picture that we like of ourselves and are satisfied. It's like, oh, look at me. This, and this, and picky. So go easy on yourself and think about the vision when you're there. How does it feel? Describe it. What does it feel like physically and emotionally to be in that vision? For those of you who, let's not always pick on weight, but let's think about what if you want to do a 5K, or you want to, for the first time, you want to become a swimmer, or you want to be a golfer or be better at anything. Think about how does it feel like to hit a perfect shot, or to do ballroom dancing, because maybe you've always wanted to do it, but you've held yourself back until life is perfect and you actually have time and it's convenient, which is never going to happen. So think about those things. When you have the transformation, how will it make you feel? What do you see, like in your mind's eye, when you can see you doing this thing, living that life, that place where you want to be? How does it feel? Put that into your literally into your body, and so much that you can feel it. Like, does it feel lighter? Does it feel just like you have freedom? Like you could do anything you want to. You have lots of energy. Like you're feeling good. So I'm staying away from, like, I've lost that weight, like I don't feel so heavy. I don't want you to say that. I want you on purpose to say the things you do want. Talk about the emotions that you do want, the things you do want. Because if you're focusing on the things you don't, you're attracting that. And that's where your mind is going. And here's science. So you think I was talking woo-woo before. Here's a little bit more. Your cells are listening. So your mind, if you can create a thought and a powerful kind of vision that really matters to you and means something to you, and then you can tie emotion to it, you can change physically your cells. Okay, so if you're in the cafe, you're going to get a little bit more heavier dose of that tonight. We're gonna talk through that. So that's number one. You have to see the transformation that you want. Number two is feel that transformation. Know what it will feel like when you get there, and think about in the past goals that you've set. If you never actually stopped to do this and feel what it was like, or you didn't have a very strong emotion tied to it, it was more or less like a something on your to-do list, and that goal was something you actually never reached, there may be a reason. And you may say to me, well, it was really important. I really wanted it. I really needed it. But still, again, if it comes back to it really wasn't tied to emotion, that may be a part, and I would guarantee you it probably is a large part of the reason that you didn't get it. It didn't have that much meaning for you. It wasn't emotional. So be thinking about that. And then the third piece, and all of this ties into a lot of mindset interviews that I've done on the Flipping 50 podcast. So if you heard the one with Dr. Ellen Langer, and I want to say that was probably the end of October or some point in October, if you're going back just to look for it or listen to it. And she is one of the first doctors, she is the first female professor at Harvard University, and she is known as the mother of mindfulness. And I talk about her incessantly, so it was a thrill for me to interview her. She's now, I think, 83 and still working, actively doing research. And she's listed in every mindset book that's out there. The book that I've shared with you, You Are the Placebo, she is referenced in there. So it's like she is the, foundation of research there. One of the things that she has said is you have to act as if the transformation has already been. You have to think as if, you have to act as if. The voice inside of your head has to be as if. So if you're guilty of saying, well, you have to erase that. You have to get that out of there. The little voice in your head, whatever words come out of your mouth, the things you're thinking are most important to you because your cells are listening. And one of the quotes from that episode was, she said, here's how I would phrase it. Anything is possible because your body is listening to the thoughts in your head. So, I had originally, I think in our conversation, I won't get this perfectly right, but I said, so you want to be careful what you're thinking because your body's listening. And she said, no. So we want to always phrase it positively. So as opposed to don't do something, you want to put it in the do this. And so she taught me a lesson right there on the episode that it's always got to be phrased in the positive. Your brain doesn't hear the don't. It doesn't hear the lose weight. It only hears wait, and you're attracting it to you. So you don't want to focus on lose weight. Got to exercise to burn calories. It hears weight. It hears calories, right? So think about what you do want. You want a faster metabolism. You want to be lighter. You want to be energetic. You want to focus on the things you do want. How much more fun is that in 2020 to be focused in the positive? So those three things that are missing from goals generally are, one, really seeing the transformation that you want. That's where you want to start. What would excite me? Because then you do have to be doing the right things. You don't, you can't eat chocolate cake for breakfast and wish your way or positive think your way to the transformation you want unless you want whatever results happen from eating chocolate cake for breakfast. Probably having something worse for lunch, my guess would be, and probably being in a coma by 2 p.m. But you want to think about that, see the transformation, start that, feel the transformation. And if whatever vision you have for yourself, the transformation that you have from yourself doesn't create strong enough emotions to excite you, that you can't literally feel it. And so if crossing a finish line, would feel like, the race or the distance that you're thinking about, if that would just feel like, so powerful that it puts tears in your eyes, you're onto something. And if it doesn't, if it just feels kind of like it's an empty goal, like a check that off and then I'll go into the next one, there's no meaning for it for you. So you really want to think about what's your why, and we use that a lot. I probably have a book back on my shelf by Simon Sinek, who came up with that, start with why. No matter who you are, for health, for fitness, for wellness, for business, if you're going to start anything and it's going to be hard, and most valuable, worthwhile, meaningful things are hard, you've got to have a why. So maybe your why, the bottom thing is, maybe, yes, it's about health, but is it about, in a better why, it's about your family, about being there, being able to enjoy them and have them enjoy you for a lot longer. So see the transformation, feel the transformation, and then act as if the transformation has already happened. Talk as if, behave as if. Because if you're somebody who's already at your optimal weight, at your optimal energy, living the life, not sitting on the curb or standing on the curb, but actually starting to do the ballroom dancing now before you're at your ideal weight, starting to dress the way that you imagine you will with confidence when you're at your ideal weight. If you start it now, you're already becoming that person. And that is a key part of actually getting the goal. Super, super important pieces of goal setting. So quick review, we just talked about, setting New Year's resolutions and the funny stats on, 20 something setting them versus 50 something setting them. And whether you call them New Year's resolutions or you call them goals or intentions, you do not have to wait until January 1 of 2021 to do it again. You get a new start tomorrow. You've got 365 days of new starts, fresh starts. You can do it every week, every month. You can do it every 2 weeks. You don't have to wait. You don't have to stick with one that you've got that you don't love. You can absolutely change it in any way, shape, or form. Things happen, things change the course that you need to go on in your life. And it may be other people in your life affect what you're going to do, but you've always got it. So shifting and keeping it positive. And I encourage you to put it down on paper. So one of the things that for 2020, I got back to this morning, and I'm going to journal in the morning every day. Just thinking about, tying up loose ends, because it gives you more ability to be creative if you can tie up those loose ends and or dump them so you don't have to commit them to memory. And being in the positive when you state your goal. So it's not, I don't want to spend as much money. It's, I've got to figure out, I want to figure out how to have just an abundance, right? Or it's like, I don't want to eat junk food anymore. Figure out, I want to put the best, most positive food and fuel in my body so I've got constant energy and I feel good all the time. So those kinds of things, reframing your speech. And sometimes you don't realize that the goal you had might be negative until you put on paper and you learn so very much. So, okay, anybody have any questions? Please feel free to share that right now. I'll stick around just for a little bit. And a couple of shameless plugs. All right. So I snuck the retreat in there. I would love to see any of you there. And Stronger 1, our 12-week strength training program is open just for a few more days. So we close it up because we all go through this 12 weeks all together. And we've got a special private Facebook page for our Stronger participants where you can ask questions. I'm going to be jumping in there in the next couple of days. We're going to talk about exercise nutrition specifically for strength training and get people started, but without overwhelm. So we'll just talk a little bit about it. So you do get some support, not just with the strength training exercises, how to warm up and cool down, and how to do some yoga. If you're interested, there are 4 yoga videos that come with that, in addition to the 12 strength training videos. But we're also going to walk through together because it's the beginning of the year. We're all very conscious about what did I just do for the last week or a couple of weeks over the holidays, and how do we get back on track? And for women in midlife, in any phase of menopause, whether it's perimenopause, postmenopause, the rules change, right? And you may not know even what does on track look like for me. So if you're like a lot of women, dairy and gluten and wheat actually don't agree with you, and they make it impossible or very challenging for you to lose weight if that's causing gut reactions or interfering with thyroid function. So we walk through, how can you actually find out if that's true for me? Those kinds of things, and just eye-opening information that you may want to consider. Maybe the first time you hear it, and you may not be ready to act on it, but you'll get the information, and then you can choose whether or not you do want to do it. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions come in right now. Hey, Linda Johnson. And Sheila says, Happy New Year. This is so spot on for me all the way around. So good. And I think for all of us, I don't know that we ever graduate. We're hopefully, as long as you live, you're going to be setting some goals. You're going to be wanting something, not necessarily more or, just very slightly different, but maybe better. And, science always changes. So we're always going to have that. I want to learn more. And if you're like me, you like to consume new information. And, one of the things that continues to motivate us, I think, as we age to get better is continuing to learn. It's stimulation. And I think the wisdom of being 50 is magical because we're not afraid to ask questions anymore. We're not afraid to say, I don't have all the answers, and to get better at asking questions. So if you happen to be on the Facebook page, Flipping 50 TV, Flipping 50 TV is the page. I did 2 interviews with my mother this week, who's 93. And some of you probably saw a little humor in the fact that I asked her if she had any regrets about not exercising more earlier in her life. She said no. I said, I'm going to have to edit that. But I thought about it, and the next day I came back and we did a part 2 because her basis of answering was only based on the way she was socialized and conditioned in her lifetime. Exercise was something that people started doing as we got more automated, right? And as people wanted to use it for weight loss. That was really, when women started exercising, it was about that. It was about looking better. And she always was pretty comfortable. And, maybe genetically, I don't know, my mother, my grandmother, wasn't in great shape. So genetics, I don't know if that was it or not. She was a larger size woman, and she had arthritis since I ever knew her. So fairly young, in her 70s, she got rheumatoid arthritis. And yet my mom, has the same kind of arthritis or level of arthritis that many, many do, and probably will at 90, right? But nothing worse. And she was always comfortable with that. So she said no based on, I was always very comfortable with my own weight. It wasn't in reference to what I came back the next day and asked her about, which was, if you could have avoided, blood pressure medication or cholesterol medication, if you could have avoided a hip fracture and a fall and had better balance and been able to, this is the one I got her, drive your car longer. She was like, oh yeah, that one. I knew that would get her. Or stay in your house longer, right? Because she's now in an assisted, semi-assisted living apartment where it's a little bit smaller and easy to manage, and she's got help right there if she needs it. But it's not being in your own house. So for how many of us, independence is a big piece of what we want. So when I asked her, if you could have something that would have given you all of those things and it was rolled into a pill, would you take that pill? And she said, yes. And I said, well, that pill was exercise. And that, she was like, oh, and so much better question, right? That we want to be asking. So it's making sure that we're tying the right questions to what it is we want in our goal setting as well. So thanks so much for being here, everybody. Fanny says, I just bought the whole flip. Can't wait to receive it. So awesome. So happy new year. Let me know how it goes. And you should have an email on its way to you already, Fanny, with the programming. So double check that you've got that. Mary says, always ready for new information. I want to learn new things. Yes. I mean, this is such an exciting time for us to be demanding new information that's absolutely about us and not about, another gender, right? Or another age range, because we are so very unique. As our hormones change, it's time for us to be demanding. We need studies that feature women who are in perimenopause or menopause or postmenopause, because that's where we are. And our hormones all are volatile, and our metabolism and our body composition is different. That's why researchers don't love us, because we're so variable. But it's absolutely why we also need to demand that there is more, because otherwise, without that, we don't know that what works for a 25-year-old male at the peak of his muscle mass is going to work for us. So there, I'll leave you with that. Happy New Year, everybody. I'll put the links to in the comments to Stronger. If you're not there yet, I'd love to see you there. If you have interest in the retreat, reach out to me just with a private message, if you would, and we'll get back to you. So we can't take reservations too much longer, because we're actually making the reservations for our dinners and our fun activities. Okay. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, whatever that entails. And thanks so much for tuning in. Bye. So bye, everybody.